Fog everywhere. Fog up the river where it flows among green airs and meadows. Fog down the river where it rolls defiled among the tears of shipping, and the waterside pollutions of a great and dirty city. Chance people on the ridges, peeping over the parapets into another sky of fog, with fog all around them, as if they were up in a balloon and hanging in the misty clouds. Bleak House, Charles Dickens.
On a cold December 4th in 1952, Christmas spirit was in the air, but something else was too. On that very day, London came face to face with the killer fog.
Any fog would cause an increase in deaths, but this was sudden. You see, in most cases, those people would have been taken into hospital. But this came like a killer in the night.
The Great Smog of London was an extremely unfortunate tragedy that was catastrophic to the community. It killed thousands, damaged the environment, and caused havoc to fog over London. Thankfully, it disappeared within 4 days, and the government quickly made a solution to help alleviate this disaster.
What is the killer fog?
The killer fog, also known as the Great Smog of London, was a horrid event. It occurred in 1952 and left tens of thousands of people dead. It is notorious for being the 10th deadliest disaster in Great Britain and Ireland based on the number of deaths. Although it may seem like London should learn from this event, there was another minor smog in 1962 which killed approximately 750 people. There were also smogs in 1873, 1880, and 1890, but we're focusing on the worst one, 1952's Great Smog of London.
The harsh conditions.
It's a warm fog. It was wrapped around you. It was all-possessing.
It was smelly, it was dirty, it was black.
On December 7th, 1952, the fog was so dense there was little to no sunlight seen, and people could only see approximately 5 feet in front of them, at best. People have reported that they couldn't even see their own feet. When walking, they had to distinguish their location through their sense of touch, and they had to be cautious of the greasy black ooze that was on sidewalks. In addition, the smog left the faces of citizens black, similar to how coal miners would look after being in the mines. Stan Cribb, who was present at the time of the tragedy, remembers being stunned by the blackness of the gathering fog. After a few minutes, he couldn't see the curb from his spot behind the wheel. After a few more minutes, Tom Cribb, his uncle, got out and started walking in front of the hearse to keep his nephew on the road. He carried a powerful hurricane lantern in one hand, but it was useless. "It's like you were blind," he says.
How was it caused?
When factories emit smoke, it creates smoke clouds made of sulfuric acid. When fog is in the air, which is simply water suspended in the atmosphere, it makes it extremely hard to see. And when coal is burned, it creates sulfur dioxide. When these three elements combine, it creates what London had in 1952, an extremely harmful smog that pollutes the air. Plus, there was little to no wind in London at the time, making the smog seem even denser.
Health effects.
The Great Smog of London was estimated to have caused 150,000 hospitalizations and 4,000 to 13,000 deaths, which mainly consisted of elders, infants, and children. Roughly 4,000 died during the disastrous event, of which many were caused because of damage to the heart and lungs or from illnesses like bronchial asthma and pneumonia. The smog also increased the chances of children getting asthma. It was even noted that 500 people died in one day. Patients' lips turned blue as they died due to the toxic smog. The majority of the deaths occurred after the smog passed, mostly because the patients' conditions left them a few days to live. Epidemiologist and environmental advocate Davis and her colleagues analyzed the data from several months after the smog and found that around 13,000 more people died between December and March. Although these people died from the smog, the government, with Winston Churchill as the Prime Minister, attempted to blame a bad flu season.
Community and social effects.
Once here, the fog comes to stay.
Slowing down traffic of all kinds, cutting down visibility to a dangerous degree, putting a premium on how to get to work, and more important still, some may think, on how to get home.
In addition to the effect on health, the community was impacted greatly. Throughout London communities, many schools and businesses were closed due to the horrid conditions. Many means of transportation were also closed down. One of the only transportation units that wasn't closed was the underground train system. Furthermore, property crimes increased as a result of how easily criminals could get away. One girl was even stabbed with a stiletto in the fog. Hospitals were also immensely impacted. They weren't able to close during these 4 days, even if the smog permeated throughout their building, because they had to take care of the people affected. Maureen Scholes, a nurse at that time, states, "You couldn't see along the corridor that you walked in when you came on duty. You couldn't actually see from one end of the ward to the other, and it's not that enormous a length." Dr. Waller, a doctor at another hospital during the Great Smog, confirms, "In the wards where there were many patients, you couldn't see clearly to the end of the ward. There were many patients admitted, but there were far too many affected, and they apparently couldn't get into the hospital and perished outside."
Environmental effects. Not only were people affected, but a large amount of animals were affected too. Thousands of animals died during the event due to the dirty air and incapability to find food. Many birds crashed into numerous buildings because they couldn't see, which sometimes caused major damages to their body. Not only did it impact wild animals, but it also impacted many animals we need. Many pet owners were also forced to create masks for their pets in order to keep them safe, and many of the cattle in the markets of London were killed by the devastating conditions. Some breeders created masks for their cattle by soaking grain sacks in whiskey. Eyewitness account.
It was thick gray. It was like walking through a gray mass. You never saw a clearing. It was such a shock. I walked out the door and I put my hand out and I couldn't see it. You know, I'd hear the steps of somebody walking behind and think I was going to be mugged or something. Under my dress, I would always wear a long slip, and usually a white slip. It was kind of amazing. I couldn't believe that this happened. I took off my slip one night, and do you know the whole bottom half from the waist down was a white slip. It was totally gray.
Positive impacts. Though this was a horrendous disaster, there were positive or triumphant outcomes as a result of the smog. As soon as London realized it was extremely urgent, they did everything they could to stop it. As shown in this graph, pollution had decreased as soon as it began to worsen extensively. The smog motivated the government to work harder on health and environmental regulations, especially when creating the Clean Air Act of 1956. This was a government act aimed to help control main sources of pollution with smokeless zones. The lower level of smoke pollution brought about by the Clean Air policy helped to reduce the number of deaths in the London smog in December, compared with the smog in 1952. It's this newspaper, which was released during the smog in 1962. Cleaner types of coals were introduced, which would decrease sulfur dioxide pollution. The smog also spread awareness throughout London about air quality and pollution. This included learning how to make homemade masks in the event that they needed to protect themselves from the smog. The newspaper also reads, "Between 1952 and 1960, largely through the Clean Air Act, emissions of smoke in the London area as a whole went down from 141,000 tons to 89,000 tons, a fall of about 37%. The Clean Air Act of 1956 also influenced other countries such as China. According to Dr. Renyi Zhang, we have given China some ideas of how to improve its air quality." Today. Though these actions helped, London is still facing air pollution problems today. According to The Guardian, about 9,500 people die in London every year due to air pollution. Many people also suffer from asthma and other respiratory issues caused by the pollution. According to Pacific Standard magazine, in 2018, London exceeded its legal air pollution limit in January of that year. This means that London still needs to work on making improvements to their air quality. Overall,
the Great Smog was a tragedy to all of London. The circumstances caused tragic things to happen and left a lasting impact on society. Fortunately, it ended triumphantly as the government created the Clean Air Act, which would help reduce air pollution.